On the table next is the story of a card table. That's right, a beautifully crafted Chippendale card table. It was built in 1759 for a Philadelphia merchant and upon his death valued at 50 cents. It first sat in servants' quarters, then was put in storage for almost 100 years. It was rediscovered and auctioned in 1991 for almost $1 million. The story of this furniture's progress is really about people and about taste, art, and how we come to value material possessions. Joining me now is Thatcher Fry, and he's the author of Objects of Desire. Also with me is Harold Sack, president of Israel Sack Incorporated, one of the pioneers in American antiques. David Schwartz, president of David Schwartz Incorporated, which specializes in Americana, and Wendell Garrett, senior vice president of Americana at Sotheby's. And I'm pleased to have all of them here. Let me begin with you, Thatcher, because anyone who lives in North Carolina ought to be here. Tell me how this story for you came about.
I didn't know anything about antiques. In fact, I didn't know what a highboy was when I got started 4 or 5 years ago. Wrote a piece for a magazine that led to the book contract. And I think when I first began to talk to these dealers and collectors, they really didn't know where I was coming from. I was a Martian completely, because I was asking the most basic questions. But eventually I began to ask more and more interesting questions, and they suffered me a little.
And so what's interesting about this? What's interesting about a Chippendale table that was once sold for 50 cents and made for 50 cents and sold to the original owner for 50 cents and then later becomes sold for $1 million at your place? What's interesting about it? What do you find that makes this story worth telling?
Furniture restorer named Alan Miller brought that table alive to me. He has studied Philadelphia carving for most of his adult life, and he was able to show me how the proportions of that table and the leaves, how the leaves on the table began to come to life.
And we're going to be able to see the table now as you talk, but go ahead.
This particular carver was brilliant at forming leaves that looked like they were in a state of motion. And with someone like Alan Miller explaining them to you, showing you how this leaf is turning to face the sun and that leaf looks as though it might be full of rainwater, the thing begins to come to life, and you then begin to compare this table to other tables that may exist even at the Metropolitan Museum, and begin to see how truly exquisite it is.
All right, who says this table is worth $1 million? And who says it is more than just old, it is a thing of uniqueness?
Well, I think there's a consensus when it comes to quality.
In other words, who defines taste and quality?
Collectors, and people in the field with some sort of a visual memory of what's come before and what's on the market today. People who know the difference between masterpieces and pieces of lesser quality. And when we saw that, we realized this was a table in a class by itself. There are about 6 or 8 others like it, but this table was unique in several ways. One, it had been off the market, it was unknown. But I think there is a consensus among collectors, dealers, people in the field as to what worth is.
And what do those people like you have? Is it an eye? What is it?
Well, it's we really basically represent the collecting world. Being a dealer, we're representatives of the taste that's made by collectors. However, we are leaders in the fact that we educate the collector into this taste field to let him know the difference between good, bad, and indifferent. Your former question to Wendell was, what makes this worth $1 million, is a good one. It only takes 2 people. 2 bidders making $1 million.
Yeah. What makes them worth $1 million is somebody's willing to pay $1 million?
Exactly. 2 people. Somebody had to be an underbidder. If you eliminated those 2 top bidders, you don't know what the price would be. I mean, the actual price is based on the final bid, based on 2 bidders. Now, Philadelphia furniture of this quality and type have always been a leader in interest among collectors. This particular table brought $1 million because of precedent. In 1983, a Philadelphia Pinecrest table brought $1 million at auction. As a matter of fact, I was the underbidder on that table. Our firm handled that table when it was $15,000 in 1952.
Should have kept it.
Went through, we absolutely should have kept it. It went through several hands. But the idea was that this table brings $1 million only because precedent had it, that other things of that quality brought $1 million. It was only up to 1971 that no piece ever brought $100,000 at auction.
People like you and people like David earn your keep because you say this is worth $1 million, and like Wendell as well, it's worth $1 million, and then you have to have somebody could be willing to pay it to confirm your judgment and establish you as a player, as a definer of taste in this culture.
They have to have the confidence in what you say is so, and then they make up their mind as whether they can afford it or not.
How is it different for you than, I mean, Harold deals in traditional antiques. You deal in folk
art, painted furniture. It's a much younger field.
Yeah, tell me how it's different.
Well, historically, it hasn't been collected as long on a serious basis. I think the fact that we're sitting here talking about this as art is very meaningful. Harold Sack has spent the better part of his life trying to educate people to the fact that the decorative arts should be taken seriously and should be equated with the fine arts. The fact that a table sells for $1 million, unfortunately, the price is what brought it on the cover of the New York Times Magazine. We know about this. We're in a small world. We're dedicated to it. Wendell Garrett spent his life studying it. Unfortunately, the price gives it a certain kind of respect factor to the larger audience. We're here at Charlie Rose talking about the table because it was $1 million.
Well, no, because it's a great story. I mean, $1 million makes it a great story. Here's what, go ahead, Thatcher, because here's my other question. It is the notion of what these objects mean to the people who buy them. Do these objects have more than just a sense of quality and craftsmanship, but also personality? You know, what's in it for these people?
Very much so.
No, I mean, I think people have historical associations. That's why a chair that George Washington once owned will bring more money than one that didn't, assuming other things are equal. It's rarity. American furniture is far more valuable than English furniture of exactly the same type because it's more rare. But this aesthetic, this notion of aesthetics is really the one that makes the difference. And it's the one which these
aesthetics
people...
defined as taste, as sense of quality?
Yes, what's beautifable. I mean,
quality.
If you've got two very similar objects in front of you, the market requires that we create a hierarchy, and one of these objects is going to be valued more highly because David Schwartz thinks that the curve in its leg is better than the curve in the other leg, you know, of the other chair.
Let me explain one thing that people aren't aware of. An antique necessarily is not valuable. It can be crafted by an expert and still not be valuable.
What makes it valuable then?
An artist craftsman making it, a craftsman with great art qualifications and artistry. In other words, these pieces that we're talking about now, this table particularly, is made by an artist craftsman, not just a man who knew how to craft, but who had artistry in his heart. So it's what we've suffered from all these years in our field was that the decorative arts have never been considered the fine arts.
But here's where people step forward and say, listen, I mean, I understand that, and I appreciate the extraordinary artistry of a legitimate craftsman who, over a body of work, has been able to establish his or herself in that. But on the other hand, if I can reproduce it, the same thing that's apparent to the visual eye, this is a quality reproduction, it serves the same purpose. Why shouldn't it be as valuable?
Well, let me first, why is the first edition, for example, more valuable? And it's a matter of collecting. A first edition or a second edition can make a tremendous difference in value. Now, as far as a reproduction is concerned, you have a good point. A reproduction properly made can be aesthetically just as attractive in outline and form. But it lacks the nuances of age, patina, usage.
And the experience of where it's traveled.
And the wear,
and the wear, and its personality. It develops a personality.
Well, tell me about personality.
Let me tell you about personality. When I was 14 years old, I had a job working at in Boston as delivering securities for a man by the name of Elmer Bright. Elmer Bright was a customer of my father's, and he had a brokerage house. And he brought a serpentine front Massachusetts chest of drawers. Now, there's just so many dimensions in a serpentine chest of drawers. It's double serpentine. It's got OG bracket feet, and it has 4 drawers and brasses. So what's different about it? And I was 14 at the time. I remember him buying it for my father. Many years later, and about 10 years ago, I was in the restaurant in Boston, and somebody yelled out, "Harold Sack!" And I turned around, and I went over, and it was one of Elmer Bright's sons, whom I didn't recognize, but he recognized me. Oh, I said, Mr. Bright, I said, you have a chest that your father bought for my father. I said, I left. He says, you'll never get it. A few years ago, I was at Sotheby's, going through the galleries, and I see a chest, and I said to myself, where did I see that chest of drawers? My God, I know it from somewhere. I got a hold of Bill Stahl. I said, Bill, tell me, who can sign this piece to you? He says, well, he went and looked up. He says, man by the name of Bright. I said, my God, that's the chest. Now, from 81 years old to 14 years old, I remembered that chest. Why? Because it had a personality.
All right.
But you also have visual memory.
Well, I have visual memory, but it had a personality.
Yeah. Now, but do people in this business look at these objects? The table we just saw, the Chippendale and others. Here's one of Harold's books, another table that's there. Do they look at them as personality? These things have personality to them.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And
There's a personality both among the collectors and among the dealers, and there's a cult of personality.
And is there also, I want to read a lot into this, is it also possible that these tables, they just, because they can exist beyond generation, tables as objects not only have personality but immortality?
They do. They absolutely. I think it was George Kubler, the great art historian at Yale, who said that objects are portions of arrested happening. They are pieces.
Say that again.
There are portions of arrested happening. They're pieces of human industry and genius frozen in time.
Yeah.
So that they're the only memories we do have.
Which is the reason art's important.
And the reason we want to pass these things down.
It's it's a permanence of a civilization.
But one thing that's fascinating to me about this creation of taste is that whereas Harold Sack and his father were creating taste for this American formal furniture towards the beginning of this century, David Schwartz is helping to create the taste for folk art today because it's so new. And he decides when he finds something that's utterly unique whether he thinks it's beautiful.
And if he does think it's beautiful and he's willing to buy it or sell it at a certain price, then that puts a stamp of approval.
If one of his collectors buys it, that puts a stamp of approval.
Wendell, are Americans different than Europeans in an appreciation of antiques? Is there a difference in French taste and American taste? Are they more refined than we are?
Well, clearly French and English taste is a much more. Their taste goes for much more ornamented objects, but I think Americans do have this great interest in provenance, which is part of the personality we're talking about. Provenance, who owned this? Who was he?
Yeah.
He was an important banker. We know his house. We have a portrait of him, and this is part of. One could argue that this is part nationalism. It's part patriotism, but I do think that we. Well, Harold, you have addressed this subject of the Americanness of American taste.
Well, I always try to look at this picture as follows. Do we buy American things and value them highly because of historical associations, because of sentiment, or because we're Americans? Or do they have merit in themselves as an art form? Mm-hmm. And I decided long ago that they definitely have merit as an art form, and in this respect. They have developed an American personality, and I would define it as such. Elegant simplicity. Simple elegance. And that is the thing. Form and proportion.
That's Harold's vision that has created that beauty, in part.
Is there one city that's the antique capital of the world?
New York.
New York is. So you say that because it's where you work, or you say that because you can make a case?
It has become.
Yeah. Let me finally go to this question of the auctions. Now, you have all these auctions there, right?
Yes.
Who you set the price there? You got. I mean, how does that work?
No, we work with the consignor, the seller, about the limits of the bid, but the high and lows of that, and so that. But it's the expertise, and the expertise is very important of those who say that this piece should move in this area or in that area, and so we work with the client in trying to set these limits.
For those people who appreciate these things, whether it's a painting or a piece of furniture, those buyers, regardless of their education, their, quote, refinement, what can we say about them? Just that they love?
There's a passion among collectors, a passion both for education and for the objects. I think especially among the American collector, they're tremendously interested in learning about the objects.
And they can't be defined by old money, by education, by their status in society.
My clients run a gamut.
By income either.
No.
We are selling the Little collection this weekend, and this is a couple who died in their 90s, who collected for 70 years.
This is a Bertram K. Little and Nina Fletcher Little collection.
Passion and knowledge, isn't it? And that's the combination that makes for a great collection.
Yeah, I've decided after spending, 3 or 4 years in this world that some people are born with a thing gene, a passion for objects, for things, because it's ubiquitous, especially at the top of this market.
Now, I got to end with this question. Let's assume that somebody watches this and they say, that's fascinating, it's a great story, it's about what the wealthy do with their money, but it's not for me. If you don't have huge incomes, how do you,
You do it carefully. I have a client who's a policeman.
Yeah.
He's a policeman, and he and his wife collect very carefully. They collect on a budget. They zero in on areas that they can buy the best examples.
Objects of Desire, the Lives of Antiques and Those Who Pursue Them. Thatcher Fry, thank you very much for coming here. It's a fascinating story. We thank all of you. Great to meet you. Thanks.